Welcome back to Comparison World Facts. In this video, we will contrast the military might of NATO members with that of Russia and China. Who own more weapons? Who has more land space? Who will rule the world in the future? We got all the answers with interesting facts and figures. So let's start without wasting any more of your time. Let's define NATO prior to getting started. Organization of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO or North Atlantic Treaty Organization, is a defensive alliance of 28 European nations and the United States and Canada. Regardless of the fact that all 30 NATO members lack military might, the United States led the organization with nuclear-armed nations like France and the United Kingdom. There are several nations that lack nuclear power yet have military prowess. Germany, Turkey, Italy, Spain, and other countries are members of NATO. In order to defend one another against an attack from any outside source, NATO's autonomous member nations agree to form a framework of mutual cooperation. Now, let's get right into it. Keep watching along closely. We don't want you to miss out on who has the most armored vehicles. You're sure to be surprised. Let's examine the population first. The entire population of the NATO member states is about 960 million, or about 12% of the population on Earth. While the combined populations of Russia and China are about 1.56 billion, or about 20% of the planet's population. The combined GDP of NATO members' nations is approximately $44 trillion in absolute terms, while GDP in buying power parity terms is approximately $50 trillion. On the contrary hand, the combined GDP of Russia and China is about $18.5 trillion nominally, but it is almost $31 trillion in terms of GDP purchasing power parity. Between all NATO members, the USA has the most nuclear weapons, trailed by France and the United Kingdom, whereas both Russia and China are nuclear weapon-wielding nations. With protracted ICBMs, submarine launches, ballistic missiles, long-range bombers, and air-based missiles, both NATO countries and Russia and China have a trifecta capacity. Compared to Russia and China, which have an active military of about 3 million and a reserve force about 2.5 million, NATO countries collectively have 3.35 million active military troops, and about 2.2 million reserve service members. Tanks are still a crucial piece of equipment for modern warfare. The creation of tanks with advanced weaponry, adaptability, resilience, and mobility, as well as the capacity to combat on varied terrains, in whatsoever conditions, and in disputed cyber warfare, has emerged as a big factor worldwide. NATO countries have a sum of about 15,600 major battle tanks, but Russia and China have a total of about 18,500 tanks, counting reserve ones, which Russia has more as compared to China. So, who owns more armored cars? Russia and China combined have about 70,000 armored cars, compared to the 110,200 armored vehicles that the NATO countries collectively possess. A fact here to be noted is the 1063 BR6 security rating of the Bentley Bentayga makes NATO's one of the safest intermediate SUVs available. Next, the locomotive artillery, also referred to as self-propelled artillery, is armed with a locomotion mechanism of its own to advance to the shooting position. The self-propelled gun, the self-propelled howitzer, self-propelled mortar, and rocket artillery are included in it. NATO member countries presently have about 2,500 to 3,000, depending on the estimate, compared to more than 6,500 pieces in Russia and 4,100 in China. So, who possesses more rockets? Military forces and space travel have a rich history of mutual influence. With current rockets deriving from World War II-era missiles, today's military service depends on space-based equipment for a variety of tasks, including surveillance, meteorological tracking, telecommunication, and navigation. NATO nations have about 2,770 multiple launch rocket systems, while Russia and China have about 3,250 plus active multiple launch rocket systems and about 20 in reserve. On top of that, towed artillery presently, the NATO countries have about 5,480 pieces of towing artillery in total, whilst Russia and China have about 4,000 pieces of inactive towed artillery and more than 6,000 pieces in reserves, the majority of which are aging and obsolete. So, in a comparison of aircraft, who has more? When acting defensively, an aircraft offers close air support to the land-based army and thwarts potential enemy airstrikes. Military aircraft are crucial in naval warfare because they can spot and destroy vessels and submarines. protecting the seacoast from invading army. Total power currently, there are almost 21,000 aircraft in NATO national government's fleets, compared to about 9,000 aircraft in Russia and China. Comparison of fighter jets and interceptors, Russia and China have reportedly have about 2,800 jet fighters and interceptors, compared to the approximately 3,530 fighter jets and interceptors that NATO countries actually possess. Stealth F-22, Raptor, Stealth F-35, Lightning II, and others are among the primary fighter aircraft utilized by NATO member nations. Dassault F-16, F-15, F-18, Typhoons in Europe, Jazz-39, Gripen, etc. Russia and China, on the contrary, employ Stealth. Stealth J-20, Stealth 57, Stealth 30, Stealth 27, Stealth 34, aircraft MiG-29, MiG-31, J-10, J-8, J-11. For the helicopter comparison overall, NATO nations have over 8,500 helicopters, compared to the about 2,500 helicopters in total in Russia and China. NATO countries have something like 5,470 total naval ships, while Russia and China have more than 1,150 total naval ships, according to a naval power comparison that takes into account auxiliaries. Keep watching along closely because we're about to reveal who's in the lead, Russia or China. We wouldn't want you to miss out. So, who has the upper hand related to aircraft carriers? A vessel that acts as a sea-going airbase and has a full-length flight platform, as well as space for storing, preparing for deployment, and bringing back aircraft, is known as an aircraft carrier. Russia and China have 3 aircraft carriers, compared to the 17 aircraft carriers owned by NATO members, 12 that are nuclear-powered. After aircraft carriers and amphibious assault ships, cruisers are typically the biggest ships in a fleet, and therefore can serve in a variety of capacities. Russia and China have presently 5 interceptor cruisers. A destroyer is a warship that is quick, nimble, and long-lasting, and is designed to accompany larger ships in a fleet, escort, or combat force and protect them from strong, short-range assaults. Presently, there are about 90 destroyer ships in NATO member states, compared to about 60 in Russia and China. Frigates are warships that have a variety of wars in combat and are smaller than destroyers. Currently, NATO nations have about 135 frigates, compared to about 61 for Russia and China. Corvettes are smaller in size and, compared to frigates, are used as small warships. Russia and China presently have about 154 corvettes, compared to about 54 for NATO member states. Russia and China together have 148 submarines, of which more than 50 are nuclear-powered, while NATO members currently have about 146 submarines, among which 90 are nuclear-powered. Lastly, Russia versus China. Who's leading? Russia came in at number 11 with a GDP of 1.7 trillion, while China had the second largest economy on the planet with a GDP of 13.6 trillion. In regards to its economic output, national R&D initiatives, and available funding for its armed forces, Russia is currently a very small power. They also demonstrate how strongly Russia depends on the enormous quantity of nuclear weapons it inherited from the FSU to maintain its shaky position as a superpower. Contrarily, the data indicates that China has been able to successfully expand its economy, technological foundation, and military capabilities, and that it is considerably more capable of competing at a domestic level than Russia. But it must be emphasized that pictures solely can only tell a portion of the truth. The contrasts presented in this research come from a variety of sources, many of which are incompatible with one another, or are approximated and/or described in ways that make it difficult to compare them accurately. Additionally, the nations and other entities that produce these statistics frequently use different methods for data collection and definition. In crucial categories of comparison, several nations also fail to report or only do so with excessively politicized statistics. So, here are all the numbers of 3 forces regarding military power. Did you enjoy the video? Let us know in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of all of our upcoming content. Thanks for watching!